Believe it or not, the sustainability shift is on. Vision is becoming reality. Many of you all around the world are working hard to make this happen. Thank you. Thank you, scientists, for pointing out what's happening to our planet and what we need to do about it. Thank you, creative souls, for ideas and inventions bold enough to make a real difference. Thanks to all of you who embrace them, building sustainable businesses that the next generation supports and might even like to work for one day. Thank you, change agents, for actively choosing to live and consume in more sustainable ways. Thank you, leaders, for showing courage. Ambitious climate goals help us drive change on all levels in every corner of the world. Because our emissions are your emissions, and yours are ours. Let's make this transformation the greatest collab in human history. Together, we can pave new ways forward. Believe it or not, the sustainability shift is on. Vision is becoming reality. Many of you all around the world are working hard to make this happen. Thank you. Thank you, scientists, for pointing out what's happening to our planet and what we need to do about it. Thank you, creative souls, for ideas and inventions bold enough to make a real difference. Thanks to all of you who embrace them, building sustainable businesses that the next generation supports and might even like to work for one day. Thank you, change agents, for actively choosing to live and consume in more sustainable ways. Thank you, leaders, for showing courage. Ambitious climate goals help us drive change on all levels in every corner of the world. Because our emissions are your emissions, and yours are ours. Let's make this transformation the greatest collab in human history. Together, we can pave new ways forward. Believe it or not, the sustainability shift is on. Vision is becoming reality. Many of you all around the world are working hard to make this happen. Thank you. Thank you, scientists, for pointing out what's happening to our planet and what we need to do about it. Thank you, creative souls, for ideas and inventions bold enough to make a real difference. Thanks to all of you who embrace them, building sustainable businesses that the next generation supports and might even like to work for one day. Thank you, change agents, for actively choosing to live and consume in more sustainable ways. Thank you, leaders, for showing courage. Ambitious climate goals help us drive change on all levels in every corner of the world. Because our emissions are your emissions, and yours are ours. Let's make this transformation the greatest collab in human history. Together, we can pave new ways forward. Believe it or not, the sustainability shift is on. Vision is becoming reality. Many of you all around the world are working hard to make this happen. Thank you. Thank you, scientists, for pointing out what's happening to our planet and what we need to do about it. Thank you, creative souls, for ideas and inventions bold enough to make a real difference. Thanks to all of you who embrace them, building sustainable businesses that the next generation supports and might even like to work for one day. Thank you, change agents, for actively choosing to live and consume in more sustainable ways. Thank you, leaders, for showing courage. Ambitious climate goals help us drive change on all levels in every corner of the world. Because our emissions are your emissions, and yours are ours. Let's make this transformation the greatest collab in human history. Together, we can pave new ways forward. Believe it or not, the sustainability shift is on. Vision is becoming reality. Many of you all around the world are working hard to make this happen. Thank you. Thank you, scientists, for pointing out what's happening to our planet and what we need to do about it. Thank you, creative souls, for ideas and inventions bold enough to make a real difference. Thanks to all of you who embraced them, building sustainable businesses that the next generation supports and might even like to work for one day. Thank you, change agents, for actively choosing to live and consume in more sustainable ways. Thank you, leaders, for showing courage. Ambitious climate goals help us drive change on all levels in every corner of the world. Because our emissions are your emissions, and yours are ours. Let's make this transformation the greatest collab in human history. Together, we can pave new ways forward. Sustainability shift is on. Vision is becoming reality. Many of you all around the world are working hard to make this happen. Thank you. Thank you, scientists, for pointing out what's happening to our planet and what we need to do about it. Thank you, creative souls, for ideas and inventions bold enough to make a real difference. Thanks to all of you who embrace them, building sustainable businesses that the next generation supports and might even like to work for one day. Thank you, change agents, for actively choosing to live and consume in more sustainable ways. Thank you, leaders, for showing courage. Ambitious climate goals help us drive change on all levels in every corner of the world. Because our emissions are your emissions, and yours are ours. Let's make this transformation the greatest collab in human history. Together, we can pave new ways forward.
Selamat siang, good almost afternoon, everyone. Greetings from the Swedish Embassy in Jakarta. Good to see that there are so many here joining us for this democracy talk on sustainable business that we are arranging here today. Our second in a series that we hope will be a very long one, discussing many important subjects related to democracy. My name is Gustav Dahlin. I'm Deputy Head of Mission here at the Embassy in Jakarta, and I will try to take you through this show as smoothly as possible. And I am going to say a few more words about democracy talks and the drive for democracy that this is part of, but I would like to start by introducing our guest speakers today. And first, joining all the way from Sweden in the early morning in Stockholm, we have Cecilia Ekholm, who is Swedish Ambassador for Sustainable Business at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. And she's been with the Foreign Service for a long time. Previously, before this, she was our ambassador to Peru. Good morning, Cecilia. God morgon, can you hear me?
Good morning. A pleasure to be with you in Jakarta today. It's actually snowing in Stockholm, so I really wish I was actually in Jakarta. But I'm very much looking forward to this. Thank you for the invitation, Gustav.
Thank you so much for coming, and I'm sorry about the snow, but that's Swedish weather, right? And also joining us is Pa Toto Suharto, who is President Director of SKF Indonesia. So running the Indonesian branch of this industrious Swedish company, long experience before that also within various sectors of the industry, and also active within Kadin and the chapter, I believe, that works on Indonesian-Swedish relations. So selamat pagi, Pa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, selamat siang, Pak Gustav. Thank you very much for your invitation.
Thank you. Good to see you. So I will shortly give the floor to the two of you to give to educate us on sustainable business and your perspectives on this. But I thought I'd say a few words before that on why we are doing this at all. And so the Swedish Foreign Service has a campaign that we call the Drive for Democracy. And it's really a reaction towards the trend that we see globally of a democratic decline, or at least democracy and its institutions being under threat. And this is a reminder to us that democracy can never be taken for granted, that it must always be reinforced and protected in various ways. And one of those ways, because democracy, to its essence, it's a deliberative process, is to talk about it. And that's what we do through these democracy talks. So we bring in guests representing both Sweden and Indonesia to talk about various subjects that relate to democracy, and to get both the Swedish and the Indonesian perspective on that to sort of further the discussion and hopefully contributing in a small way to the empowering of democracy. And today we've come then to the topic of sustainable business. And some might argue that that's a bit far off the realm of democracy, but I would argue, and I think our speakers will argue as well, and might come back to that in their presentation, that this is an integral part of democracy, that businesses are essential actors in fostering and protecting democracy, being part of democracy itself. So conducting sustainable business is indeed a part of the democratic system. And that's why we're having this discussion today under this umbrella. The webinar is going to work like this. We're going to have presentations first from Cecilia and then from Toto. And after that, we'll have a discussion and also open up to the floor for questions. We have allocated actually 1.5 hours for this. We'll see if we're going to utilize all that time. We definitely have it. And if you do want to ask questions, there is the Q&A box to do that. I'm sure by now everyone is familiar with how you do this. Right, so I think with that as an introduction and without further ado, I would like to leave the floor for Cecilia to give her presentation on sustainable business from the perspective of an ambassador.
Thank you so much, Gustav, and hello again, and greetings to all of you who are listening to today, and a special greeting from another person who I know is joining from Stockholm, His Excellency Ambassador Snomo, who is also sitting here in the snowy Stockholm. I will see if I can share my screen with you. I hope you can see my screen now. Is that the case, Gustav?
It is very much the case. We see you loud and clear, if that's possible.
Excellent. So, as Gustav was saying, democracy talking sustainable business. Why are we doing this, and what role does sustainable business play? Sorry, I'm trying to switch for some reason. I have a problem switching screens. Here, perfect. So in the as an introduction, I would like to talk about these following points. So the first thing is, what do we talk about when we talk about sustainable business? And why is it important? What are the tools for sustainable business, and what is the Swedish government's view and work on sustainable business? So these are the different points that I'm going to raise in my first presentation today, and then I hope that you will have plenty of questions and queries when Toto has given his presentation as well, and I'm happy to engage in a dialogue on these very important issues. But first, let me introduce myself. What is a sustainable business ambassador? Because that is not a common feature in many countries. But Sweden has actually had a CSR ambassador since 2002. So it's 20 years this year. And as you can see on the title, we've moved from CSR, which is corporate social responsibility, and where this work or this sector started, but we're now talking about sustainable business, which is a much broader concept, and I'll come back to that. So what is the role of this CSR or Sustainable Business Ambassador in the Swedish government? Well, first of all, it's my task to represent the government in national and international foreign negotiations, such as the United Nations and the OECD. I'm also chair of something called the National Contact Point, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I'm part of the advisory committee to GRI, which is the Global Reporting Initiative. The Global Reporting Initiative is a very important platform that formulates standards for sustainability reporting. So that means reporting on climate, human rights, and all kinds of sustainability issues. It's also my task to coordinate policies within the government, because obviously it's not just the Ministry for Foreign Affairs who's working with sustainability issues related to the private sector or sustainable business. I have many colleagues in many different ministries who are doing that. Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Environment. And we need to coordinate our policies so that we are all striving towards the same goal. We also have a Sustainable Business Team Sweden. And Team Sweden is what we call the trade and trade finance agencies who are helping Swedish businesses to export abroad, and also helps foreign business who are interested in investing in Sweden. And within that within trade and trade finance, we also work very much with sustainable business issues. So that's more or less what I do as a sustainable business ambassador. So when we talk about sustainable business, what are we talking about today? Well, it started out with philanthropy in the 1950s, and in many countries it's still viewed as a sort of philanthropy where businesses are giving grants to fund schools or help out with school food or building hospitals, which is all very good. But it has definitely evolved since then as well, because in the late 1990s, in the early 2000s, there was a big focus on doing no harm, which is responsible business conduct, meaning that businesses within their own organization, with their subsidiaries, and also within their supply chains and value chains, would not contribute to doing harm towards the environment, harm towards human rights. And it has moved on since then, because today we're talking about how company or private sector can actively contribute and be a very vital part of contributing to Agenda 2030, Sustainable Development Goals, and the Paris Agreement. It's very clear in Agenda 2030 that the private sector is seen as a key player in order to attain the Sustainable Development Goals, and without the private sector, it's not possible. So we've gone from philanthropy to doing no harm to being an active player in sustainable development. And in that sense, of course, business is a very important actor when it comes to democracy in so many ways, because we're all part of democracy. Democracy is something we build together, be it citizen or companies or organizations, civil society organizations and trade unions. So we're all actors, and we're all important actors in how to defend and keep democracy going. But we have different roles in doing that. We don't have the same roles. So the talk today is a little bit about how do we see the private sector role in terms of sustainable business, and hence in contributing to democracy today. So today, what is the focus? What are sort of the hot spots and the focal points when we talk about sustainable business? There is a large, very strong focus on human rights, business in relation to human rights, but also when it comes to climate change and the just green transition. So not just the green transition, but a green transition that does no harm, that does not have a negative effect on human rights or the environment. Consumer awareness is much larger now than it has been before, because with communications tools and digitalization, consumers are very aware of sustainability issues and raise a lot of demands when it comes to the private sector on sustainability issues. And the last sort of trend that we're seeing now, especially in the EU or in Europe, is the focus on more regulation. We're moving from a sphere of voluntary commitments by companies to regulation through legislation and other rules. That is sort of the trend that we're seeing when it comes to sustainable business today. But of course, sustainability is not just a good thing because it's good for people and planet. Sustainability is also good business. And many Swedish companies and other companies have discovered that in the long run, sustainability means good business. So, of course, there has been known for a long time that sustainability innovations yields profits. Different analyses have shown that if you have sustainable products, you actually sell more because the demand is greater. Company value today is more based not just on the production centers you have, the resources you have, the number of employees, but also the values that you represent and how you work with sustainability. And you will definitely see that when it comes to investment. Investors today demand sustainability in the companies that they invest in. It's also connected to brand recognition. Every company knows that being connected to negative sustainability or non-sustainable values is not good in the long run. It's also very important when it comes to employer attractiveness. Young people today want to work for sustainable companies. So if you want to attract the best talent there is, sustainability is a good idea. Resource efficiency, of course, also saves money. You see, when you go to the hotel, you will always see a little sign which says, if you want to save water, then please, keep your towel for another day or your sheets. And that is a win-win because it's good for the environment not to wash the towels every day, but it's also good for the economy of the hotel because you don't have to wash towels unnecessarily. And of course, in the long term, we've also seen that if you work seriously with your sustainability, you can have not only long-term resilience, but also high credit ratings. Because investors, as I said before today, are looking into companies that are working actively with sustainability issues. And analysis have shown that those companies who are already working with sustainability and risk analysis actually had a better outcome when it comes to being impacted by the COVID pandemic and all the disruptions, because they were used to working with risks and they had already taken their measures when it comes to sustainability. So those companies actually perform better. So let me get to the first point when it comes to, or sort of the first part when it comes to how business and democracy are interconnected. And one thing, of course, is that without a thriving and living planet, we will have nothing, not democracy, not anything else. So business is a key player in the green transition and protecting people and planet. And by doing that, they're also contributing to sustainable development. And just let me give you two examples of how that can work. The first is that in order to mitigate climate change or stop climate change, we need to move towards a fossil-free world. And how can we do that? Well, one way of doing that is increased electrification. And in Sweden, there is, and I know that in many other countries, there is right now a great focus on producing better batteries. In Sweden, there is a company called Northvolt that started full-scale productions of the world's greenest battery cells in the north of Sweden. And when they're producing, they're not just producing batteries, but they're using renewable energy, recycled components, and sustainable processes. So in doing that, they're also being part of the green transition. Another is to look at different materials that are circular and biodegradable and are not based on fossil fuel or other materials that is more difficult to produce in a fossil-free manner, such as concrete. And that is, of course, tree or wood, timber. So in Sweden right now, many countries are working with new innovative solutions using biomass to replace fossil-based products. Examples of this would be skyscrapers made out of timber, airplanes made of nanocellulose, Cellulose, which is biomass, is also used to make new and very ingenious way to produce textile fibers, and that can be a sustainable alternative to cotton because they use less energy, chemicals, and water. So this is great news. But we know that there is also another part of this, because, for example, when you produce batteries, you need to source minerals and metals that are considered to be in risk sectors when it comes to the probability of negative impacts on human rights and the environment. When it comes to timber and forestry, there's of course great risks when it comes to land rights and deforestation issues, which can also be harmful for the environment. So when businesses are doing this great thing and contributing to mitigating climate change, it also needs to be in a way that respects human rights, labor rights, and the environment, not just in the company's operations, but also in the company's value chain. So this is the second part when it comes to companies or sustainability and private sector and democracy. And now we're talking about responsible business conduct. And responsible business conduct is something that I work with a lot. And that's where I'm representing the Swedish government in the United Nations and the OECD. So these are a couple of the instruments, or rather I would say the core instruments today when it comes to the government's different, government and businesses agreeing on how business should do this when it comes to respecting human rights, the environment, labor rights, etc., in their operations and value chains. The first is the UN Global Compact. So the UN Global Compact was founded in the year 2000, and it's actually the private sector's own UN organization. It's comprised of over 14,000 member companies today, and those 14,000 member companies come from 160 different countries. They assign, when they become members, they promise to follow 10 principles of the UN Global Compact that relates to human rights, corruption, labor rights, and the environment. And when they do that, they will not just work with the principle, but they will also communicate that how they're doing that work. The second point here is the UN Guiding Principles of Business and Human Rights. And that is a tool that was, or an instrument that was adopted in 2011 in the UN Human Rights Council. And it gives you, what it does is that it very clearly tells you what the division of responsibilities when it comes to human rights is between states, business, states and business. Because it is the state, it's always the state that has to protect its citizens' human rights. The overall responsibility for human rights is always rests with the state. But the company has an obligation to respect human rights in its operations and the people who can be affected by its operations or in its value chains. So the company has a responsibility when it comes to respecting human rights regarding its own operations. It's also the responsibility of the company, should there be a negative effect or should there be a problem with human rights, to remedy or to try to make it right. But that is also within its own operations and in its value chain. The OECD Guidelines is an instrument that is wider than the other two. So the OECD Guidelines comprises of different chapters. It's just not human rights, environment, labor rights, but also competition, research, and some other chapters that are not present. So it's a wider instrument, but it has fewer adherents. So to the OECD Guidelines, we have 50 member countries who have signed up. So there are more members or more countries that are part of the OECD Guidelines than that are OECD members. So it's a broader membership. And every country who has signed up to the OECD Guidelines also needs to have something called the national contact point. And if you remember, initially I said I'm the chairperson of the Swedish national contact point, and that is the national contact point that is connected to the OECD guidelines. And the national contact point has three roles, one can say. One is to promote and talk about the guidelines, to inform private business, civil society, and trade unions on the content on the guidelines, how you can work with it, promote the tools that the OECD are offering when it comes to working with sustainable business. It's also another task is to help to interpret the guidelines, because sometimes it's not entirely clear how the private sector should act in accordance to the guidelines, and then they can ask the national contact point for guidance. But the last and probably most well-known role of the national contact point is to be a complaint mechanism. And it's a complaint mechanism that has a very low threshold for complaints, because anyone in the world, an organization or a person, an individual, can, if they feel that, in this case, it would be a Swedish multinational company, is not following the guidelines, is not living up to its obligations related to human rights or the environment, they can lodge a complaint with the national contact point, who will then examine it. The only requirement is that the person or organization which lodges the complaint has a relation to the complaint and the company, so it has to be there has to be connection. But in doing that, the national contact point can then do its best to offer a mediated outcome or a dialogue between the parties, because it is, in the end of the day, a non-judicial function. So the national contact point cannot force a company or a private sector to do a certain thing, but it can definitely help out mediating a different outcome and increase the understanding between the parties. The Swedish national contact point, because every country is allowed to organize its national contact point as it sees fit. So the Swedish one is actually tripartite. So whereas I'm the chairperson and sitting in it from the government, my other colleagues within the NCPs come from the trade unions and the industrial organization. And that makes it a strength for us, because we have parties representing different sides. And when they agree and when we can talk about it, it's much easier and becomes much less of a confrontation. So those are sort of the responsible business conduct tools. Now, when I say that companies should work actively with doing no harm and working with responsible business conduct, there is a very specific tool for companies to do that, and that tool is called due diligence. And this is an expression that you will hear a lot because there is a lot of different regulation and legislation coming out now related to due diligence. And what is then due diligence? Well, due diligence is a tool whereas a company constantly and dynamically evaluate the risks in its own operations, its subsidiaries, and in its value chain. So it starts out with embedding a policy that should be recognized from the highest level of the company, expressing the values of the company. This is a company which does not infringe on human rights, which does not harm the environment, and we want to work with these risks, for example. Then you need to put in a system whereby you identify the possible risks. And the risks are usually not one. There can be many risks depending on what sector, what country, what size of company. So different companies, being large or small, being active in high-risk sectors or non-risk sectors, will have very different risk analysis. If a company is in a sector that has a lot of risks, the guidelines and the process allows you to do a priority of risks. So a company should always start looking at the risks that are the highest risk or more severe risks. And the severity of risk is not only the kind of risk, whereas of course human rights risk would be a very high and severe risk, but also how irremediable the risk is, how permanent the risk would be. So if you do your prioritization of risk, you can start working with the most severe risks, and then you can move on to the other risks. And when the company has identified its risks, it needs to look into how it can seize, prevent, or mitigate those risks within its operations and its value chain. Having done that, you need to track the risks. How are they evolving over time? Are there new risks arising or not? And finally, you need to communicate the risks to the world. And lots of companies do that through their sustainability, their annual sustainability reports. And of course, if a negative risk is realized, a company should provide or cooperate when it comes to remediation when appropriate. So this is sort of the tool that companies can use when it comes to the responsible business conduct. Now, these are some live examples. I actually looked at this. This is from this very week, and it's actually from the website of a couple of very well-known Swedish companies. So if in the first, the first picture up there with the little circle with many different colors come from a very well-known Swedish telecoms company, and it's an example of how they work with human rights risks in their value chain and in their operations. So they're doing the step of communicating actually how they're working with human rights risks. And when you're talking about due diligence, you talk about it in terms of upstream and downstream. So when you talk about upstream due diligence, you're looking at what you get from the source. So if you look at, for example, in the telecoms sector, you would look at, for example, the minerals and metals you need to do or to produce your equipment. So that is sort of your upstream sustainability or human rights assessment. That's the upstream part. But when it comes to telecoms, you might also have a downstream, and downstream is from production to client. And you might have the necessity of making a downstream analysis. And in terms of the telecom business, that downstream analysis would encompass things as how is this equipment going to be used in the end? Will it be used for surveillance and control in a way that is not appropriate when it comes to respecting human rights? So a large telecom company would have to do the upstream and the downstream human rights due diligence. And this is what they're doing, so it's quite interesting and available online. The other two pictures are actually from the same companies, and it's also a large Swedish company that produces trucks. And they are also doing upstream and downstream human rights due diligence and show how they're actually working. They're going a bit further. They're not just publishing the risks, but they're actually telling us how they're working with the different risks. So, and you can probably not read because the text is very small, but if you see the map, there are different colors and different gray and blue and darker gray and whiter gray, which is basically means that in the countries that are with the light gray, they're working with, this company is working with its suppliers. So the suppliers are being audited for sustainability and human rights, and they're also being part of a capacity building program to increase the understanding or how to work with human rights issues as a supplier. When you look at the blue, they're production plans for this company. So basically they're working with human rights issues within their own production plans. And the darker one is they're assessing end user risks when it comes related to human rights, depending on who they've sold to. So they're also doing, even this is a truck company, they're doing both in both ends of the spectrum. And these are actually from this week, just found. So there is a lot of information that can be found because transparency is one of the issues. Now let me move on to talk a little bit about how the Swedish government works with sustainable business. So these two documents, also available online on the Swedish government website, is our base for international sustainable business. The first publication is our National Action Plan for Business and Human Rights. So the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights that were adopted in 2011 require adherents to produce their own national action plans showing how every individual country will work with business and human rights. And this is the Swedish one, launched in 2015. We were then the 6th country in the world to adopt a national action plan. It was followed up in 2018, and the follow-up recommendations were then incorporated in the other policy document that you see, which is the Platform for International Sustainable Business. It goes to note that the UN Guiding Principles and the Oecd Guidelines actually turned 10 years last year. So they've been in force for quite some time, and they've definitely impacted the way business work with responsible business conduct issues. Now, the second here is the platform on international sustainable business, which describes the government policy when it comes to sustainable business, and it is it has a holistic approach. So the platform does not only talk about responsible business conduct, but it also talks about the importance of the private sector's role in reaching the SDGs and its contribution to fight climate change. But at the same time, the government in the platform is formulating a very clear expectation that Swedish companies shall act sustainably and responsibly by working for human rights, gender equality, good working conditions, the environment, climate, and combating corruption. So there is a very clear expectation, and that Swedish companies work with these issues in all of their operations, being in Sweden or abroad. There's actually also a text when it comes to companies and democracy within the platform for international sustainable business. And that is, the Swedish government welcomes that the Swedish company that want to be a part of advancing democracy and enhance the respect for human rights, labor rights, and combating corruption. So in doing that, you sort of tell the companies what parts you think that companies would make a great difference when it comes to democracy. And of course, that is then in its own operations, business relationships, working with these issues, human rights, labor rights, combating corruption, but also communicating on the values that Swedish companies stand for, which is gender equality, respect for human rights, and respect for the environment, fighting climate change. So it's important not just to walk the talk, but also do the talk. And when it comes to results, what have we achieved so far? In the platform for international sustainable business that was adopted in 2019, the government identified 168 actions to be taken across government, across many different ministries. And we did an evaluation last year, so that was 2021. Hopefully we've come a bit further because we're doing a new evaluation in 2022. But last year we had already achieved 121 of those 168 actions. And down below you see a couple of points of those 121 actions that have been realized. And I won't go into them because I've talked way too long. So looking ahead now, where are we and where are we heading? I spoke initially that regulations is sort of part of the trend when it comes to sustainable business, and there are lots of new regulations coming out on EU level. For example, in February, the Commission published a proposal for a directive for corporate sustainability due diligence on human rights and the environment, which will apply to companies of a certain size within the EU, but which will affect their global operations and global affairs, because there will be a legal requirement to do due diligence on human rights and the environment. We also see, looking ahead, that post-COVID, threats to resilience and democracy poses risks. We know that the personal freedom and the freedom has been circumcised in many countries. It's also, we've seen an increase in corruption, which means that in certain markets, the risks for Swedish companies and other companies related to human rights, labor rights, and corruption has increased. But at the same time, we also see an increased interest and engagement of companies. Companies want to be part of the solution, large and small, moving the agenda forward, especially when it comes to climate and climate change, where private sector is actually moving a lot faster than public sector. So when it comes to green tech, when it comes to fossil-free solutions, the private sector is really a great driving force. So I think to end on that positive note, and very much looking forward to, pardon me, the presentation by Toto, as SKF has won numerous sustainability awards when it comes to their excellent work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, for that very comprehensive presentation. I have so many questions already, and I hope we will have some from the floor as well. But I'll let you rest your voice for a little time and hand the floor to Patoto instead, to give us sort of the one. Cecilia now has given us the broad overview of how these things work and really painted that picture. Let's get a bit closer to the ground and the practicalities and hear from one particular and prominent Swedish company working in Indonesia under Patoto's leadership. So please, Pa, the screen is yours to share your presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gustav. And I would like to thank you also, Embassy of Sweden in Jakarta, for inviting me to share our activities here in Indonesia in regard to sustainable business. I would like also to greet Ambassador Kama Pradipta in Stockholm. I think he's also attending this webinar. So good morning, Pa. So let me have some introduction first with yeah. Can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yes, we see it very well. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, if we look at our planet Earth today, yeah, the planet Earth is actually under pressure. There are so many challenges that we are facing. So population growth, globalization, limited resources, waste, corruption, poverty, human rights, social workers' rights, and then health and well-being. Yeah, especially during COVID pandemic. In the last 2 years, we have challenges with air pollution, biodiversity loss, water scarcity, climate change, energy demand, energy transition, etc. So, on top of the agenda is actually also about the climate. So there is a need to massively reduce CO2 emission. Yeah, this is required. And then policymaker push also for action. Yeah, but also providing financing. So if we consider, for example, Paris Agreement, EU Green Deal, US carbon neutral 2050, and also China carbon neutral 2060. Yeah. So several customers also push for climate neutral supply chain, for example. So there are some challenges that we as a company facing today and also in the future. But for SKF, there are risks, but also opportunities. So with declining market in coal, oil, and gas, and also automotive combustion engine, there are opportunity in growing markets such as renewable energy, electrification, circular economy, and hydrogen economy. So how the world want to solve this problem? Yeah, the world has a common agenda to solve these challenges and to solve the global sustainability issue. Yeah, I think all of you here know about this SDG, about Sustainable Development Goals, and what the SKFC or how SKFC as a company in terms of SDG. So we are managing proactively, yeah, how we deal with the situation, with the challenges, with new legislation, and staying ahead of competitors. Yeah, And we are trying also to grow new business in emerging clean technologies and industry. We are supporting our customer to improve their sustainability performance in all industry. We are pushing also our supplier and partners to improve sustainability performance over the value chain. We are improving sustainability performance and reducing costs from especially here in Indonesia, in Jakarta, from our SKF manufacturing operation. And we are attracting and also engaging new and existing workforce to together to achieve these sustainable development goals. So this is our framework, how we are dealing with sustainability. So we call it SKF Care. SKF Care is our sustainability framework, contains of four aspects. First is environment, and then community, employee, and business. So I think in terms of business care, we are focusing on our customer needs. We are trying to support them also to achieve their sustainability goal. At the same time, we need to make sure we deliver our business performance, and we are preparing for the future. And we see also opportunities to do in this new business area. And for sure, as a company in Indonesia, we do our best to keep the business ethics. So in terms of environment, we have activities to reduce environmental impact in our own operation, in our manufacturing, and also in our transportation for our goods, for our components. We are working together with customer and supplier how we can reduce environmental impact. In terms of community, we bring positive impact to our local communities, especially during COVID pandemic. We are providing support for people around our operation here in Jakarta. We are providing support also for our employee and for our community. In the past, before pandemic time, we did also training and education for local community here. For example, we teach children English. We bring entrepreneurship training for young people here in the surrounding area. And for sure, the human right is also our intention here to make sure that we have a sustainable business here in Jakarta, in Indonesia. So employee care, we make sure that our employee working in a safe and health condition, working environment. So this is very important for us that employee working in a safe and health environment, because if they are feeling good, feeling well in their working environment, they can also deliver what we expect from them. So health and well-being is very important for us. We do activities here with our employee to keep health and well-being of our employees. So equality and development, I think this is also important for us to give everyone the same opportunity to grow in our company, to develop themselves and to work actually with higher purpose. So this is very important, as Cecilia mentioned before, that we need also to attract a younger generation who has concern about sustainability and climate, for example. So these are four aspects that is included in this framework, sustainability framework in SKF. So two fundamental ways to put SKF Care into practice. As a company, we drive improvements to create economic, environmental, and social value actually in two main ways. First, the business we make with our products, with our services, and also business models. Second one is the way we make business, how we are running our operation as a responsible business partner, employer, and also a corporate citizen. So let me share one by one. So the business we make with product, services, and business model. So we are trying to support our customer, to be competitive and to grow with the clean technologies in any industry application, and we are enabling also our customer to make their products perform better, while at the same time reducing the environmental impact. We are enabling also our customer to reduce environmental and social impact in their operation and processes, making them safer, cleaner, and more competitive. And then we are driving efficiency, reuse, and recycle through circular business model. I will give you an example later how we are doing this business model in the future. So to this aspect, they are related sustainable goal here. So as you may know, also in Indonesia, electrification is coming. So many OEMs, automotive car makers, starting with the electric vehicle production. So we are supporting also our customer to create automotive electrification, and also to bring them more benefit in terms of product and solution. So the light vehicle market is driven by energy efficiency, for example, a reduction of emission, and we have a product how to support our OEMs, car manufacturer, to produce this kind of light vehicle. Today, SKF has a portfolio, has an innovative solution, to enable robust and efficient electric powertrain drive. So another interesting service that we have is SKF Recon Oil. SKF Recon Oil offers a sustainable lubrication solution that saves costs related to purchasing and disposing of oil. So industrial oil lubrication no longer has to be viewed as an expensive and environmentally harmful consumable, but rather as an enabler for a sustainable circular process. So by implementing this solution from SKF, you can use oil longer. So the target is how to have a zero oil change in the future. So bearing remanufacturing is another service that we provide here in Indonesia. Soon we are building a remanufacturing center in Indonesia. Remanufactured bearing reduce the carbon footprint compared to a new one by up to 90%. This is enabler also for our customer, how they can also improve their sustainable business. Remanufacturing business benefits as a reduced lead time, lean operation, and often lower cost. Instead of taking a new bearing, you can do a remanufacturing for the old bearing, and it will reduce the cost for your maintenance, for example. Yeah, this is customer story as an example for oil recondition. Yeah, our service recon oil. 7 years using the same oil and counting. This is customer story with a Swedish paper mill, stainless steel wire and strip manufacturer. 12 weeks oil change cycle. So this is a very tight requirement on product quality. Highest product quality only achieved with new oil. Yeah, actually, yeah, with this integrated solution, 7 years of using the same oil, yeah, and still counting. 30 oil changes avoided so far, and 25% increase in productivity thanks to continuously super clean oil. So I think you see how we make the business here with the solution for sustainability. Another customer story, example manufacturing. I think we will experience also this solution soon in Jakarta, in Indonesia. As I mentioned before, we are building a remanufacturing center where we can remanufacture oil bearing and bring to almost a new condition. Housing inspected, and then we are doing housing inspection and machine the oil bearing, and the bearing can be used again. Yeah. The benefit is material is reused and energy intensive process avoided, thereby avoiding CO2 emission of approximately 2 times the housing weight. Yeah. So this is really a big achievement for sustainable solution. If you see compared to on the left side, the new housing production, yeah, from scrap metal, melting, casting, machining, use of the housing, with the remanufacturing service, you can reduce these processes, and we just do inspection and machining, and then you can use the housing again. Another customer story is rotating equipment performance. Yeah. Rotating equipment performance contribute also to reduce environmental impact. As an example, also in this Swedish paper mill, SKF offer enables increased efficiency, yeah, and then reduce the number of unplanned maintenance or unplanned stop. Yeah. By doing this, we improve also safety and lower the costs due to the elimination of manual lubrication. In this offer, we provide automatic lubrication. For the lubrication or coolant system supplying, we got 35% reduction in water consumption, 25% reduction in energy consumption, and 80% reduction in the oil needed. Yeah. So if you combine this with the bearing manufacturing, so you can save a lot. So I share with you the business we make. Now we want to share with you the way we make business. So the way we make business, how we run our operation, especially for our example here in Jakarta, we run our operation as a responsible business partner here in Indonesia with our OEMs, with our customer, as an employee, and also as a corporate citizen. So our activities in our operation, including the reduction of environmental impact and enhance the social impact here, especially for our local community. And we are driving also and supporting our supplier, business partner to do the same, yeah, so that all operation over the full value chain. This is our term. So end to end, yeah, from supplier to customer, will be aligned with the shared goal of sustainable development. Yeah, our target as a line also with what Lucila mentioned before, net zero greenhouse gas emission in our operation by 2030. And how we will do it? So first, we will reduce demand for energy. We are now having activity to make our processes more efficient, energy efficient. And we are discussing also to use renewable energy in the future, especially here in Indonesia. And then if absolutely necessary and needed, we can do also carbon offset. So diversity, I think this is one of our strengths here in SKM. Everyone has the same opportunity to work with SKM, to perform, to bring their contribution for the greater good of SKM. And we have very good people here in SKM in Indonesia, Jakarta. They are also contributing to this diversity, and you see that diversity in Indonesia is supporting our business a lot in terms of how we collaborate with each other and how we can improve our business. Another aspect of SKM Care is for sure our employee. So we do many activities for health and well-being of our employees. We make sure that our employee in the good health and maintain also to keep the balance between work-life balance. Yeah. And especially during COVID time, we supporting our employee a lot in terms of providing them with medicine, with vitamin, in case of people are infected. So we care also about the family and the need of the family. We want people to live in the balance and to live gainful and then lives coming back, work energized and ready to take the next business challenge. Yeah, I think this is very important for us. And here in Indonesia, we have also activities how we can improve the health and well-being of our employee. So I think that's all, Gustav, from my side. I'm looking forward for the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pa. That was indeed, it was a lot, and it was very, very useful to go from the sort of global perspective that we got from Ambassador Cecilia and really getting hands-on with SKF, how this can work out in practice. I think actually I would encourage everyone still to leave comments and questions in the Q&A box. I have some of my own, but I also know that since we have our distinguished friend Padubes, Ambassador Kama in Stockholm in the room, I think he would like to give a comment as well. So if I can ask our friends in Bahasa Global, is it possible to give him possibility to use his mic and possibly even his camera to give a comment? We find him in the attendee list.
Okay, sir.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Pa. Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi. Good morning in Stockholm and selamat siang in Jakarta. Thank you. I was really unprepared to make comments, but of course, indeed, it's always a privilege and an honor for me to give a few comments and views on this. But first of all, thank you, Gustav and the Embassy of Sweden for organizing this very important event and also webinar. I think the issue really is important and vital for not only Sweden, but also for Indonesia, and in fact globally, as we all have made our respective commitments post-Glasgow, and also our previous multilateral commitments with regards to climate change and also the achievement of SDGs. And also I'd like to thank Ambassador Cecilia for a very enlightening and educating presentation for me, followed by Pak Toto as well, which is testament of Sweden's commitment with Indonesia. And I know SKF has been in Indonesia for some time, and SKF is one of many Swedish companies that have been in Indonesia for a very long time. And this also is a solid proof of our strong bilateral relations between the government and also the private sectors. But just to make a few comments, first of all, Indonesia and Sweden is highly involved in the Sweden-Indonesia Sustainable Partnership. I think this is a very excellent platform, which has been running since 2020. And it is a good platform for us to deepen and widen our collaboration in the context of what has been presented by Ambassador Cecilia. And secondly, the embassy here is also very actively pushing stakeholders here in Sweden to collaborate more with Indonesia in the sector of renewable energy, as well as in health. And back in 2021, we established a working group on renewable energy, which is spearheaded by the Swedish Energy Agency together with the Indonesian Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. And also the Health Forum is also a good way of deepening our collaboration, especially when it comes to health during this time of pandemic, and also capitalizing the advanced technology and innovation that Sweden has. I think Indonesia would benefit indeed a lot. In fact, I was in a meeting just last week with the Minister of Health of Indonesia, who actually the Vice Minister of Health for Indonesia, who inquired to me the possibility to have a sister hospital with a Swedish hospital in Sweden, together with an Indonesian hospital in Sweden. I think this is also something that we could also inquire and also and look at. But overall, I think this is a good event, and also the issue is very much relevant to the priorities of our government. And just to end that, I would really encourage Sweden to look Indonesia as the regional hub in their investment and also expanding their good practices of businesses in Indonesia and beyond. As you know, Indonesia is a member of ASEAN and also a member of the Asia Pacific Economic Community, which consists of 21 economies in the region. So there is ample opportunities for Sweden to play a lot in improving their businesses, and also partnering in the development of Indonesia, as we intend to scale up our status from developing country to a middle income, and hopefully an upper middle income economy in the future. So I leave it at that. Once again, many thanks to Ambassador Cecilia, Pak Toto, and also Pak Gustav for giving me the opportunity to comment. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Pak Dubes. Sorry to have ambushed you there with giving comments, but it's always good to hear from you when you're in the room. And I'm so glad you mentioned the Sweden-Indonesia Sustainability Partnership, or SISP as we call it, this platform that we have to work between our two countries on sustainability issues, and not least through companies. And I think SKF here is a prime example of an old Swedish industry company that has really moved into the forefront of this, and in the operations in Indonesia, applying some sustainable business models, also under the leadership of a very skillful Indonesian business manager. So it's a prime example of how this kind of collaboration could work out. But if I would take then the opportunity to ask the first questions to the panelists, I would actually like to turn to Pak Toto first, because Cecilia mentioned in her presentation a lot about the business case for working with sustainability. So I was just wondering to get your perspective as a business leader on that. When SKF is pursuing sustainable business in Indonesia or elsewhere, is it purely based on business interest, that this is how you get the most bang for the buck, or is there do you consider yourself as a company, do you have your own self-interest in pushing sustainability regardless of profit, because it's in some altruistic way? How do you view that?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. So yeah, interesting question actually. So I think sustainability is not an additional point anymore for business. This is should be integrated in the business nowadays. Yeah. So you cannot divide it between business and sustainability. So, and this is in SKF is integrated in our value. Yeah. So sustainability should part of the business. So this is not only to improve our financial aspect, yeah, but sustainability, as you see in our SKF Care, is very important for the environment, for where we are living, for our community, and also for our employees. So this is, I mean, this is really important to put sustainability aspect in all what we do in the business. Yeah. So that's why it is also very important for us here in our company, in the operation in Jakarta, that everyone has the understanding how important is sustainability and how important sustainable business, starting from the shop floor up to the top management. So if you see there is oil leakage, if you see there is an inefficiency in resources consumption or energy consumption, you have to stop it. Yeah, it's not only important for our business, we have to deliver our business performance, but also we have to protect also our environment. Yeah, at the same time. So I think this is we are doing a sustainable business or sustainability not because of we just want to gain more benefit, yeah, but we want also to protect ourselves, our earth actually, by doing climate protection, using renewable energy, reduce the consumption, reduce the waste, etc., yeah, and try to have a very efficient operation and for example production in the manufacturing. So, and yeah, this is kind of built in our current business actually.
Great, thank you, Pa, for that answer. And it sort of leads into a question I would like to ask to Cecilia then, because also in your presentation, you talked about how the development of legislation in this field and that sort of pushes companies to do even more. But it seems also with companies taking a stand such as SKF here and having the sort of holistic approach to the whole endeavor, that it sometimes might be the businesses pushing legislation or pushing governments. Is that the case, or is there a need for a lot of legislation in order to push businesses in this direction?
Thank you for that question, Gustav. Yes, and a very good question. When it comes to many of the legislative proposals coming out today, many businesses are asking for it. They are firmly putting up a hand and saying, yes, we want to have legislation. And that is precisely because many of the companies who are already doing this on a voluntary basis, who are working actively with sustainability issues as well, including risk analysis and risk management when it comes to salient risks connected to human rights, environment, and corruption. Of course, they see that the companies are not doing that, it gets an unfair competitive advantage in a not a very good manner, because if you can make profit of not respecting or not looking at the risks, then of course it's not good for people or planet. So the companies who are working with this, and many companies already are actively asking for more regulation.
Wow, so there is just perfect agreement across the board of what is needed.
Yes, we actually have a coalition in Sweden of civil society, trade unions, and companies who are pushing for EU legislation on due diligence.
And is that that sense of agreement, is that true also on the global scale? And in your work as an ambassador for these issues, do you meet or do you have counterparts from all other countries that feel exactly the same way, or how is that arranged?
Many of the larger, yes, thank you, Gustav. Many of the very large companies today, the global companies, are working actively with these issues and have done for many, many years. And there are also global alliances, Responsible Business Alliance, all kinds of different platforms for these mainly very large companies. But you can also find these kind of multi-stakeholder initiatives in different sectors who are working on sustainability challenges within their own sectors. For example, metals and minerals there are lots of different initiatives, such as the Responsible Mining Initiative, etc., where sectorally you will have companies who are not only the large ones, but also the small ones who are working with responsible business conduct issues, and who are actively seeking more regulation, and then actively seeking more regulation to raise the floor and to get a level playing field when it comes to how businesses work with sustainability, so that you don't have the forerunners and then you have companies who are not doing the same. You need to raise the floor and have the forerunners, of course.
Great, thank you so much. I'm trying to read up on the questions coming in the chat box here. There are actually a few. Let's see. I will try to direct one then to Pa Toto. And there's a question here for you that goes like this. Based on your explanation and what's written on the website, it's very nice that you do renewable and other things to do sustainable business. But as we know, not everyone care about our environment. So what's your innovation or tip to attract customers or market who don't really care about these issues anymore? Is this something you have thought about, Pa Toto?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So as I'm sharing also in the presentation, that we are trying to encourage our customer to support the sustainability goals. Yeah, in the way that we providing them with the solution that are not only giving them the financial benefit, but at the same time they can improve also their sustainability. So, for example, as I mentioned before, recon oil. So, how we can use oil again and again without changing the oil. So, we give them financial benefit, but at the same time, company enjoy this aspect of sustainability. Yeah? So, and then in terms of remanufacturing, for example, currently many companies buying new bearing if the old one cannot be used anymore. So by doing bearing remanufacturing, we can reduce their costs for maintenance, for buying a new bearing. at the same time, we achieve also sustainable goal. So I think by collaborating together with our customer, and giving them the solution they are that have financial benefit at the same time also sustainability. I think there are no better way to explain how to do sustainability. So, and our strategic framework for 2030 currently also intelligent and clean. So this is a group framework. So it is clean for us that clean is part of sustainability. How we do the business with our customer, with our partner also in the future. So we are doing the business, but at the same time also we want to achieve the sustainability goal that already defined by SKF. For example, net zero by 2030.
Thank you so much, Bob. I have another question here in the chat box that I think we can put to both of you because I think it's a very interesting one. Maybe starting with Cecilia then, and it's about measuring the impact of what you do. So the question goes something like this: the idea of sustainable business is very good. However, to measure the business impact is super challenging. So how do Swedish businesses, SKF and others, usually do while managing and measuring business impact? If I put that question first to Cecilia, is this something that is dealt with on the global or diplomatic level?
It is. Thank you, Gustav. Well, measuring and follow up is part of the due diligence process. But I do agree, it's not easy. But then again, none of this, when it comes to due diligence and challenges, is easy. It's a very complex issue, and that's why, for example, when you look at due diligence issues, you're not talking about eliminating. I mean, in an ideal world, we would be eliminating risks, but it's not about. It's not about whether or not the risks are realized, because there will be risks in any market, be whatever it will be, environment, human rights or corruption. I mean, even in Sweden, businesses will have challenges related to those issues. But it's how you deal with it. The important is, how do you have systems in place so you can identify and work with these problems long term? Of course, being long term and sometimes being issues that are both related to business operations, but also to the context or the institutional context of the market. It's not always easy to see, where one thing ends and the other one starts, because they're interrelated. I would say my best answer would be, it's on the reporting side. So, for example, you have the Global Reporting Initiative, which I think is the largest platform when it comes to sustainability reporting, where companies are actually reporting also on the effects, and there are certain standards that can be used. So that is one way of actually trying to see what kind of an effect the sustainable practices can have. But maybe Toto has a more operational answer than that.
Yes, Pa, over to you. It's a difficult question. So we usually measuring the sustainability impact in terms of business case. Yeah. So as I mentioned also earlier, that we are working together with our customer very closely, because they have also sustainable goals. We want to support them also to achieve this goal. And then with our solution, we are trying also to step by step show that the solution that we have can contribute to their achievement of a sustainable goal. Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe a follow-up on that to either of you. This this challenge of measuring impact, can that diminish the case for conducting sustainable business? Is there ever a reluctance to deal with these issues because it's difficult to prove that you actually get results, and therefore to motivate to spend your money on these kind of things, or is that a non-issue?
Well, if I can start then, when it comes on an EU level, it's actually a requirement to do a sustainability report. So normally companies would make an annual financial report on their financial outcomes, but from a couple of years back, it's also mandatory to do a non-financial reporting, which is then in sustainability reporting. And this is a requirement that will be elaborated and will be widened, because it will go from being what is called non-financial, which means that you report on the values that are not financial in the company, to reporting on corporate sustainability. And then there will also be standards, so companies will know exactly what they need to report on, which means that you will have sort of back where you are already regulating the sustainability work and giving companies opportunity to show whether or not the effects. I think that there are some issues that everyone is going to work on no matter what. Climate change is going to be one of those. Either you can measure the effects or you can't, but in the end of the day, if we don't adhere to the Paris Agreement, none of us will be here in a couple of decades. So I think some of the issues are just are just very important, and that companies work with that. Not even if they can't see results, they will work with it. Not everyone, of course, but responsible companies will do that.
Thank you. We are actually approaching the end of our allocated time. 2 more minutes to go, so I'd like to finish off with one question for each of our participants, starting with Patoto. I mean, you gave us a very impressive catalog of things that you are already doing, but what's next in SKF's, Indonesia's sustainability business work?
For us, it's a journey actually to achieve the sustainability goal 2030. So we are now discussing to more using renewable energy for our operation. We have implementing new business model for our operation also. For example, we are working together with Atlas Copco and also a Swedish company, how we can reduce our fresh air consumption with their business model. So we are not doing alone to achieve our goal, but we are working together also with other companies to achieve our goal. Yeah. So I think partnership and collaboration is also the key for us to achieve this goal in 2030. Yeah.
It sounds very promising indeed. And on that note, then, I mean, it's been a promising or hopeful discussion all through this 1.5 hours. But at the same time, Cecilia, not very long ago, the most recent IPCC report came out. New data on what a hurry we are in to turn this trend of global warming around. Looking at that from your perspective and what you see of these discussions going on sustainable businesses, are you hopeful for the future that at least in this area we are positioned to turn things around, or what's your perspective on that?
Thank you, Gustav. It's a very big question. I wish I had the answer, but in general terms, I would say when it comes to green tech and moving forward, as I mentioned before, the private sector is really moving fast and going forward. You see that when it comes to the COPs in COP26, there was a great engagement by the private sector. I mean, they're there, they're willing to contribute, and they're working on it, on new innovations and moving towards a fossil-free world. At the same time, you see the IPCC reports, and obviously there's a lot more that needs to be done. So just to follow up on Patoto, we need to do this together. This definitely requires a lot more collaboration. And I also think I did see in the chat a very interesting comment on a method to measure sustainability impact, which I think methods like that is also going to be very important, because we need to know what kind of an impact different measures have. Otherwise, it's sort of, you know, having measures in the dark when it comes to mitigating at least climate change impact and reducing GHG emissions and things like that we need to work with all of us together. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. That will have to be the closing comment of this discussion, and I hope we contributed in at least a small way to this collaboration we were talking about. It's so badly needed to actually face up to the challenges. Let me then thank our two speakers, Cecilia and Toto, for your very insightful presentations and answers to the questions and this discussion. Also, big thanks to Pakama for showing up as a surprise guest in this discussion, always enlightening. This has been it for this Democracy Talk. I hope everyone has learned something from this. I at least learned a lot. I thought it was very fruitful. So for those of you in Jakarta and Indonesia, I wish you a good afternoon and good evening. And for Cecilia in Stockholm, I wish you a good Friday then, and then a good weekend to all when it comes. So thank you so much for participating. Terima kasih banyak. Tack så mycket. I'll see you for the next round.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next time in Jakarta.
Believe it or not, the sustainability shift is on. Vision is becoming reality. Many of you all around the world are working hard to make this happen. Thank you. Thank you, scientists, for pointing out what's happening to our planet and what we need to do about it. Thank you, creative souls, for ideas and inventions bold enough to make a real difference. Thanks to all of you who embraced them, building sustainable businesses that the next generation supports and might even like to work for one day. Thank you, change agents, for actively choosing to live and consume in more sustainable ways. Thank you, leaders, for showing courage. Ambitious climate goals help us drive change on all levels in every corner of the world. Because our emissions are your emissions, and yours are ours. Let's make this transformation the greatest collab in human history. Together, we can pave new ways forward.